the pleasure to introduce Mary Pepperny. I'm sure that if I would ask everybody in the room to stand whose lives or families have been touched by hospice, and Mary in particular, almost everyone, if not everyone in the room, would probably be standing. Mary is known to many of you because she's been around for 32 years, providing end-of-life care, bereavement, and grief counseling here in our county. She served as the past director of Hospice of Ashtabula County. She served as the community coordinator for Hospice of the Western Reserve for Ashtabula County until January. In January, her role shifted to that of clinical coach for all of Hospice of the Western Reserve. Mary is a licensed social worker. Her undergraduate degree is from Ursuline and her graduate degree is from Loyola. She is certified in bioethics, thanatology, and critical incident stress management. I think almost everyone in the room probably understands the concept of hospice and the tremendous service hospice provides to our families. But I don't think we think about hospice as a business. We've asked Mary to share the challenges of providing hospice services in today's healthcare market. Please join me in welcoming Mary to the podium.
Didn't you like the way she avoided saying I'm old?
32.
Oh, 32, yeah. That was only 32 years ago. Thank you for having me this morning at the Profiles Breakfast. Actually, I had hoped that our Chief Executive Officer could be here, but he has a board meeting, and board meetings, for those of you who know who have boards, are sacrosanct, so you just don't miss the board meeting. So I said I was trying to find a new face, but you wound up with a no face, so that's the way it is. I'd like to start out with a story and really hospice, and I will give you a lot of data this morning, but hospice is primarily about stories. And I will try to avoid going off on tangents, which I do. I do have a script, but I don't know why, because I never stick to it. So I will try to be aware that I really would like to share with you some of the data related to hospice as it pertains to the business section of what we do. However, 32 years ago, one of the first talks I gave in Ashtabula County about hospice was to the Ashtabula Rotary. And it was a luncheon at the old Ashtabula Hotel. And I went in, and I was, 30 years younger, 30 pounds lighter, and 30 shades of hair darker. And I walked in to the Rotary, into the beautiful entrance into the hotel, and was greeted warmly by one of the Rotarians, and he said, "Come sit down next to me," and he turned to me and said, "And what will you be talking about this morning, or this afternoon?" And I said, "Well, I'll be talking about hospice." And he said, "Well, what is that?" And I told him, and I had never forgotten, and this is a direct quote, "Oh my God, if I knew you were going to talk about that subject, I never would have come. I hate to be depressed while I'm eating." I have never forgotten that bit of wisdom. I'm glad to see you finished eating, because now I don't have to depress you. Hospice, as you know, or as you may know, is really a very ancient concept, and it was a place of comfort, a sanctuary during the Middle Ages, where the travelers who were making pilgrimages to the Holy Lands were cared for when they could no longer continue their journey. And when, in the early 1960s, different people from around the world began to see the way that people who were approaching the end of their lives were being treated, felt that we had to do something about the way people died. In 1969, we didn't even use the word die. People didn't die, they expired, like cottage cheese, or your library card, or your driver's license. We really could not bring ourselves to say that the mortality of everyone on this planet was 1 out of 1. And so we did not like to talk about that. So different people like Cecily Saunders, who began hospice in England and is considered the mother, the founders of modern hospice, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in the United States began talking about this dying experience and felt that we needed to look at a person wholly. When a child is born, they are surrounded, if they're lucky, by love and compassion and tenderness. And these pioneers felt that the same should be afforded to people as they lead this life, to journey on to whatever it is each of us believes that comes after. So hospice was essentially a philosophy, not a place. And it was an approach to how we care for people who are facing one of the most difficult times of their lives. And that is potentially facing a life-threatening illness that may end their lives. And as you can imagine, that was not a real popular profession to have 35 years ago. People did not want to address this issue. Some of us still don't want to address it today. The first hospice was founded in New Haven, Connecticut in 1974, and from that hospice today, there are approximately 3,500 hospices scattered throughout the country, with about 5,300 offices, satellite offices, if you will. Some of the hospices are nationwide. They're chains of hospices. Other hospices, like our hospice, the Western Reserve, is very local. And it has been amazing. In the beginning, hospice was basically a volunteer organization, no funding. We would go out, and even 32 years ago in Ashtabula County, we would go out and try to write grants and try to have donations and have people support this concept. Where today hospice is part of the mainstream healthcare system in the country. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. In the beginning, there were many obstacles to overcome. People, as I said, didn't want to talk about dying. It was not uncommon for people to see us and say, well, how many people did you kill today? And today, people will say, oh, those people from hospice are angels. I can guarantee you, we are neither killers nor angels. We're just ordinary folks trying to make a most difficult time bearable and trying to help people finish, if they can, what they need to finish, while doing it with comfort, symptom management, dignity, and some control. We don't have a lot of that in healthcare today, but hospice tries to afford both the patients and the family, which is the unit of care, that kind of experience. Initially, the hospices were not for profit. There was no profit to be had. We were simply trying to make, as I said, a difficult time better. In the last 10 years, however, that status has changed. And we have had, and I'm going to read this data so I'm sure that I get it correctly. In the last 10 years, not-for-profit hospices, which is what Hospice of the Western Reserve is, we are community-based, not-for-profit hospice, the growth of that status, that organizational tax status, has grown 34%. For-profit hospices in the last 10 years has grown 150%. So I think it's important for us to understand that hospice now is part of the mainstream healthcare providers in this country. And hospice is a particular part of the Medicare benefit. It is not, and I hope that I don't lose you in this because, we all speak our own language at different places. So everyone knows that at 65 and over, you have a Medicare benefit. In 1982, the federal government decided that hospice was a worthwhile venture and so instituted the hospice Medicare benefit, which is different than your standard Medicare benefit. It covers your care if you receive hospice services. It is the most comprehensive health care insurance we have at this time in the country. And what that means is if a person, and most of the people who receive hospice care are Medicare recipients. Most of the people we care for are over 65. If you choose hospice care, which is a focus on comfort care, symptom management, pain control, psychosocial, spiritual, a very holistic approach to care, then you kind of suspend your standard Medicare benefit as far as your hospice services are concerned. So let me give you an example. Perhaps you are referred to hospice with a diagnosis of lung cancer. You come to hospice and every single bit of care you receive focused on that diagnosis. So that would be from your medication, to medical equipment, to supplies, to oxygen, to all of the services provided through the hospice program, the nurses, the nursing assistants, spiritual care, social workers, volunteers. All of that is covered with no expense to the patient. If in the event of being in hospice you fall and break your leg, unrelated to your lung cancer, then standard, bless you, Medicare would pick that up, would cover that expense. So people worry about hospice care and how much it's going to cost. And the reality is that most of the time hospice care costs nothing. There is not, in standard Medicare, there's the 80-20% split. In hospice care, any service given related to the hospice diagnosis is covered 100%. So that was done years and years and years ago, because when we began hospice, we felt that people should not be worried about, and in our community they do, whether they should have medication or food. And so we have, in the hospice benefit, covered that so the people do not have to be worried about, am I going to have my pain medication or my nausea medication or the oxygen, which under standard Medicare you have to qualify for. In hospice, that is not the case. So it is a very, very comprehensive insurance coverage under both Medicare and, in Ohio, Medicaid. So Ohio's Medicaid hospice benefit reflects the federal Medicare benefit. I know there's time for questions, or you can ask me questions now, I don't care. I just wanted to be clear, because people, especially today, people worry about the economic impact of having hospice. And for most people, there is no economic impact. Medicare covers hospice, Medicaid covers hospice, almost all private insurance covers hospice, and so do the state, the PDRS and SDRS groups. They all have hospice benefits to them. So that is something important to know. Last year, about 1.5 million people used hospice services throughout the country. That still is not 50% of the deaths in our country, though. People are still hesitant to use hospice. And we know we've got a public relations problem. We know, when people see you coming through the door, they're not always real happy to see you. They'd rather have somebody else walking in. But if you need hospice services, most people will find that the experience is a positive experience if you can talk about it in terms of positive. And we at least make an experience bearable. The growth of hospice has been fascinating insofar as last year, the Washington Post bought a hospice. They were just expanding their revenue streams, and they bought a hospice. They bought Celtic Healthcare. There is a group in Cleveland, and it's ChemMed. They own Roto-Rooter, and Roto-Rooter bought a hospice. In fact, they bought a national chain. And so Roto-Rooter, who is owned by ChemMed, who owns Odyssey, who bought Vista, try not to destroy the place. They too are in the hospice business. So this is an interesting perspective on how the image of hospice has changed. And it also speaks to the fact of the growth of hospice as a revenue-producing entity into itself. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the government in particular is concerned that perhaps there might be some kind of conflict of interest, or that the total package of care may not be being provided to recipients of hospice care with some of these national chains. Now, Hospice of the Western Reserve began in Lake County as Cancer Family Services, changed its name to Hospice of Lake County, changed its name to Hospice of the Western Reserve. We are in northern Ohio, have 11 offices from Elyria. Ashtabula Hospice, or Hospice of Ashtabula County, became part of Western Reserve in 2003. This is our 10th year of being part of Hospice of the Western Reserve. And interestingly enough, with that local focus of the care that we give, we are the 5th largest hospice in the country and the largest hospice in the state of Ohio. So that is a perfect example that you do not have to go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or Tulsa, Oklahoma to be a 5-star hospice organization that provides excellent care. We have in our county at the present time about 10 other hospices providing care. Now, Hospice of the Western Reserve is the premier provider. We have about 83% of all the people in Ashtabula County who require hospice care receive it from Hospice of the Western Reserve. And I think that's partly because we've been here so long. We've been here 32 years, Hospice at Ashtabula County, then Hospice of the Western Reserve. The community has embraced us. This community is amazing, even in the statistics of Ohio. Hospice, or Ashtabula County, has tremendous support for hospice care in our community. But we are able to provide that care because we've been here so long. When our hospice of Ashtabula County became part of Hospice of the Western Reserve, we had 29 patients and 6 staff members. We actually had 13 staff members. 7 of them decided to stay at the hospital where we were based, and 6 of us transferred to Hospice of the Western Reserve. That was October 1st, 2003. As of today, we have 67 team members, and our average daily census of care in Ashtabula County is about 133 people. So we are providing care to our community for about 133 patients every day and their families. That is an amazing statistic in a county that only has a little over 100,000 people. And so you can see where the community has truly embraced hospice care because they see its value. And I can only do this by congressional district, but in Steve Laturette's district, because of the reduced Medicare expenditure for end-of-life care, and what we're finding is there's been a study done by Duke University and Cornell, and they have found that hospice care is really, and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable talking about cost effectiveness in terms of care to the dying, but that's what we're talking about, that hospice care is more cost effective at the end of life, saving about $2,400 per person. More importantly, it gives better quality of life. It allows people to be where they want to be at home, to be in the nursing facilities, to be wherever they want to be, surrounded by the people that care about them. That is a significant cost savings to the whole healthcare system. And the other amazing thing, and I have to smile because I had heard that comment about how many people have you killed today, 32 years ago. The latest data tells us that people who have hospice care, as opposed to a traditional end-of-life care, actually have a longer life expectancy, better quality, and is specific to some diagnoses such as lung cancer. So we have come a long way in 30 years from thinking that you were at death's door to seeing that hospice care and actually prolongs your life, I think is very significant. Why does that happen? We get pain under control, symptom management under control. We have people who have goals, who have some reason to continue to try to experience a quality life. And that is the benefit of hospice care. I have to tell you that most Americans spend more time planning their vacations than they do planning or talking about their end-of-life care wishes. Now, I wish I could say to you that some of us in this room are not going to need to do that, but the reality is we are. And only about 4% of us are going to die unexpectedly. About 95 to 96% of us are going to go from an acute illness to a chronic illness to a terminal illness. And we need to begin to look at this. When the baby boomers hit our healthcare system, that is going to be an extremely significant change in how we deliver care and how we respond to what people are requesting. And hospice care will be there to do that. In 2011, Hospice of the Western Reserve took care of 5,907 patients. That was agency-wide. In Ashtabula, we took care of 588 patients within our community. So that's a significant number of people. Most of the people in Ashtabula County stayed in hospice for a median stay, that's above or beyond 23 days. The average length of stay was 67. Now, that's interesting because the hospice benefit gives you 180 days of coverage, 6 months life expectancy. And we have people who are receiving hospice care for a minimum amount of time. So people still are not using hospice care for as long as they could, but they are using it for as comfortably as they can. In Ashtabula County, 38% of hospice patients were home care, 53% were nursing homes, 8% were assisted living facilities, 1% was the hospital, and 1% was what we call hospice facility. Hospice of the Western Reserve has 2 residential hospices, one on the east side, which is on 185th Street in Cleveland, one on the west side, which is in Westlake. David Simpson Hospice House in Cleveland is the one that Ashtabula uses. And I have to say, we also have at ACMC a hospice unit that is separate, distinct, and dedicated to 2 hospice patients at any given time. Right now, we have so many patients at ACMC that we cannot, we have 2 in the unit and more than 2 on the floor. There are about 5 or 6 patients there who right now are receiving hospice care. So hospice care can be given anywhere. Home, nursing home, assisted living. We have actually given hospice care at the edge of the town motel. Somebody passing through our county became very ill, was at the hotel. They called us and we took care of those folks. So it is, again, a service to which people are entitled and to which we encourage people to assess the value of this being provided to you. How is it paid for? I commented on that: Medicare, Medicaid, private sources, and it is important to remember that no one has ever refused hospice care because of their inability to pay. That would be the antithesis of what we had started out to do 30-some years ago. People matter. We perhaps don't always make the best decisions. That is not for me to judge. When people come to the end of their lives, they are entitled to have presence, comfort, compassion, dignity, and as much control as they can possibly achieve. So no one is ever refused hospice care because of their inability to pay. Hospice care is holistic. We have nurses, social workers, pastoral care, spiritual care coordinators, expressive therapists, massage therapy, art therapy, music therapy. And in Ashtabula County, I am so proud to say that we have 140 volunteers active who do everything from sitting with patients, what we call taking vigil, sitting with dying patients, to walking the dog, to doing the shopping, to writing letters, to honoring our veterans. We have a Peaceful and Proud program that honors our veterans and has, we have pinning ceremonies. Not too long ago, St. John's High School had a pinning ceremony. It was very touching and very beautiful to acknowledge to many of our veterans the gratitude and the debt gratitude that we owe them. But we have in our community 141 active volunteers, and 21 are being presently trained to continue the hospice philosophy. And I am delighted to say that from Ashtabula County, now let's be candid, some people can't even say our name, it's Ashtabula. From Ashtabula County, for our volunteers for Hospice of the Western Reserve, we have 4 of our volunteers have been chosen as Senior of the Year in the county. 2, one of whom was here that I just saw, Joy Beebe, were chosen, and George Sporello were chosen as Ohio's Hospice Volunteer of the Year. And 1, Mary Clark, was chosen from every hospice volunteer in the country as the Hospice National Volunteer of the Year. Now this is from our little county, where sometimes we think we don't do as well as we should, and shame on us. Because we have wonderful, wonderful treasures in this community. And I think that we should all be very, very proud of that. And that, again, is something that hospice is able to share with its community. We have a children's bereavement camp both in Cleveland and at Thousand Trails in Jefferson, who have given us endless access to that campground right before Memorial Day. And we have kids go down there and play and grieve and cry because kids grieve too. And in hospice, we use the family. The family is the unit of care. And so we really are very attuned to the needs of those children. We are very involved with some of the school systems, almost all of the school systems actually. And we have been resources to them in terms of whatever tragedy or death they might have in their school system, regardless of who it is. Yesterday we were at one of the Buckeye schools, just working with kids. We have a STAR program that we have instituted in the schools. Those children that sit in front of us, as some of the educators know, really do grieve terribly, and we're not quite sure what to do with all of that. So we have those resources. We have a bereavement center in Cleveland, which was very involved with the Chardon school shootings and continues to be supportive of that. We have been supportive of industry. I tell you all this not to say, oh, yay us. I tell you this so that we can break through that mold we have of hospice. That all we do is, take care of dying people. We do so much more than that, and I think this is not something that is really known in our community, despite the fact that I've been saying this for 32 years. I think that we also would be remiss not to tell you that there is a program we have in Hospice of the Western Reserve called Palliative Care. It's called the Navigator Program. That program is going to become much, much more important as we enter into the reform of the healthcare system, as we look at readmissions to hospitals, This is a program that is more of a consultative program, not as comprehensive as hospice, but nonetheless allows us to make home visits, advanced practice nurses, social workers, to concentrate on symptoms and perhaps to help people who maybe are not quite comfortable with hospice have a better life. And we have in the agency 700 patients in that program, and in Ashtabula County about 25. So that gives you kind of a comprehensive overview of hospice. And since I started as a story, I'd like to end with a story and then take any questions you might have. We, in Hospice the Western Reserve, try to do what we call life enrichment. And it would be fascinating someday just to sit down and tell the stories of the families that we have. We all have stories, but hospice has amazing stories. And one of the stories I would like to share with you, actually I'll share two because I see some young folks here. Well, of course, all of you are young to me. Some are younger than others. So for the young ones among us, we have in our program a 15-year-old who had a very rare diagnosis. And when I asked him, what is your goal? Because we all have goals, doesn't matter where you are in your life cycle. He wanted to get his driver's license. Now you can appreciate what a driver's license is to a 16-year-old. And his mom and dad were just very, very worried about this. And we were able to do that for him. We got him his license, we got him his license, and then we all went out and partied. And that, to that boy, was the goal. He wasn't nearly as worried about his illness as he was about getting his license. And he got it, and he enjoyed his freedom and the ability he had to drive around for as long as he was able. I didn't plan to share that story, but since I have some of you in the audience who would appreciate getting that driver's license, I thought that would be kind of neat. The other story I would like to tell you is about a patient we had not very long ago. He was in one of our nursing facilities. He had extreme dementia. He had not spoken in years, but he was a pilot. And because we try to really touch a person's life, the essence of who they are, the primary team found out that he was a pilot, and by hook and by crook made arrangements with the Ashtabula County Airport, with the people who were there, got somebody to donate a plane, and he, his family, and two of our team who were not all that happy about going up in the plane. But you do what you need to do. And you always send somebody with the patient because you never know. Went up, and for an hour, this gentleman, his family, and a couple of team members were flown all over Ashtabula County, out over the lake, out over his neighborhood, out over the whole county. And this was a gentleman who had not said a word in at least 3 years. The plane landed, and there was not a lot of visible manifestation that he was having a good time. He would look out the window, and he would kind of nod and do whatever. They landed, and they got out of the plane, and the gentleman turned to one of the hospice team members and said, "Let's do it again." So I close with that story because you never know. There are these moments of opportunity that can be touched and can be seized. And that's, I hope, and I believe what hospice does, that we try to put people in touch with what means most to them. So I hope maybe in a couple years when we get all done with the regulations and the growth and the profits and the not-for-profits, that we can gather here and do it again at the profile breakfast. So I have no idea what time it is, but if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them. I'm sure that there are a gazillion things I didn't cover, but I would like to also thank this community for making Hospice of the Western Reserve the hospice of choice. Ashtabula Hospice, when we became part of Western Reserve, brought such a legacy. and such a tremendous strength to this organization, and that's because of the people in this community. And for all that time and the support that have been given, we cannot thank you enough for that. So I extend my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of all of us from Hospice of the Western Reserve, and more importantly, on behalf of all the patients and the families that we have served for the last 31 years. And they are thousands and thousands of your family members, neighbors, and friends. So for that, we thank you. So I don't know if there are any questions or comments, or you all have to scurry back to whatever it is you'll be doing. Okay.